Welcome back, my students, to a brand new episode of Comet Class. And in today's lesson, guys, it's going to be a pretty, happy but kind of sad video because we're going to be doing the conclusion to the Kindred Saga / Nick Spencer's The Amazing Spider-Man run. And yeah, originally I was planning on reviewing all these issues when they actually dropped, during the week. But I wasn't able to do that because I was dealing with COVID, having COVID and stuff, so I didn't do it weekly the way that I was hoping to. But the video is here for you guys, and we're going to be covering issues 72 all the way to 74 and Sinister War issue 3 and 4 as well, basically covering the entire conclusion to the Kindred Saga / Sinister War story arc. And yeah, it's going to be a really great video. I really enjoyed this volume of the comic, and it's sad to see Nick Spencer go, but he went out with a bang, and I think he did a good job with this conclusion, and I can't wait for you to go through with it with me, and I can't wait for you guys to go through with this story with me. So without further ado, let's jump right into today's story. Let's go. So the story starts off with Spider-Man taking on the Sinister Six, and we get a lot of cool action panels showing all the Sinister Six basically fighting against Spider-Man, trying to take him out. And we even get to see Dr. Octopus and Spider-Man, squaring off with each other, basically. It's a really cool scene. So that fight's going on. While that's going on, we get to see Norman Osborn. Basically years ago, we get a flashback showing that he had met with this person that isn't revealed yet on who his true identity is, but I bet you guys can kind of take a guess on who exactly this is. And yeah, he basically comes up to Norman while he's kind of jealous of Mindel Strom getting some credit for some of the work that they've done together. And this person's basically taking advantage of Norman's rage and anger. And yeah, but we'll talk about that when we get back to this. So we get to see that Harry and Carly basically go to the morgue that Carly works at. They find a secret entrance where they were being held and basically lead them to the morgue. And they basically take off the covers of that one body that we didn't get to see who it was. And that gets revealed later on. So we get to see that Norman basically is brought and kind of like led to this area where Harry basically tells them about all the stuff that's actually going on, and it's revealed to us in a flashback. Let me just go back into flashback that the guy that was talking to Norman Osborn is actually Mephisto, and Mephisto basically makes a deal with Norman that he'll bring his life back to the way it was, maybe even better, but in exchange he has to give up his firstborn son, which is Harry, his only son. And this shows us why exactly all this stuff happened with Harry Osborn, which some people might like, some people might not like, but it's a really cool revelation, and I really enjoyed this scene. Now, we get to see that Kindred basically is talking with Mary Jane, and they basically say that they're going to reveal themselves and that it's time for her to learn the truth, no matter the cost. And we get to see who this is in a little bit. So Spider-Man was able to make his way out of the Sinister Six for a little while, and it was able to patch up some of the damage he took during that battle. And he's confronted by the Black Cat. The Black Cat basically tells Spider-Man that he can kind of like take a rest at her, Wolverine, and the Human Torch are basically going to take over and try to fight against the Sinister Six. But before, this plan can go into action, it's revealed that Wolverine is actually the Lizard, that Mysterio was disguising him and the Sinister Six as allies of Spider-Man, and gets mad at the Lizard for basically being like an animal that can't control himself and kind of ruining their plan of catching Spider-Man off guard. But the battle basically continues, and Electro basically says that Lizard's got the right idea, let's finish him off. And in this, basically saying that they want to just get this battle over with. Because if you remember, they're actually battling for their souls because Mephisto is using those centipede-like monsters creatures to basically go into their brain, and it will basically like explode their brain or something like that, basically killing them instantly. So the battle continues, and Dr. Octopus actually grabs Spider-Man and says like he'll finish Spider-Man off, but before Spider-Man can actually be killed by Dr. Octopus, Dr. Octopus is attacked by more members of the other Sinister Six's teams, because they're all arriving to trying to like take Spider-Man's head. And yeah, we also get to see that the Sin Eater is basically brought back to life and is using his powers to try to bring other people back to life, it's implied. And yeah, so that's really cool. Now, Boomerang and the rest of his type of Sinister Six team basically say that they've found Spider-Man. Boomerang basically tells them that Spider-Man is here, and he tells them that the Savage Six are actually fighting him as well as the Sinister Six. So it's not looking good for Spider-Man, and Fred seems to be concerned, showing that he's probably going to turn to the good side at the end. And yeah, eventually Sin Eater arrives and being resurrected, and he brings the Juggernaut with him, as well as Whirlwind, and I forget what the other guy is called. But he's like this android-looking guy, as well as the Great Gargoyle and Morlun. I mean, the fact that Juggernaut is here and Morlun, I would be running if I was Spider-Man. And Kindred basically sees everything that's going on, and you have Dr. Octopus seeing what's going on. Boomerang looks a little worried. Mysterio's doing his thing. What's her name? The Beetle basically is kind of freaking out as well, that they're all players on the stage, and now he says, let me show you the end. And yeah, this basically is the end of, this whole conflict. This is like the climax. And Spider-Man basically is just trying to survive. I mean, this is a ton of villains that usually doesn't have to go up against this many at once. So he kind of has to use their powers against themselves, and he's able to get the guy Whirlwind to be turned to stone by the Great Gargoyle. But Sin Eater basically catches Spider-Man off guard and hits him behind the neck, almost knocking him out. And he basically says that he's going to make Spider-Man, repent in hell, because he's kind of mad at Spider-Man. His actions have brought him back to life, or at least Kindred brought him back to life probably, but because of the whole Spider-Man thing, that he was paying for the sins that he had did, and that now they can both, be in hell and pay for the sins together. But Spider-Man does something that I've never seen him do, which was like super hardcore. He webs the barrel of the gun, and basically the gun explodes, taking out Sin Eater's hands, and it was just such a metal moment. But Spider-Man basically tries to escape, and we get panel with the Juggernaut basically trying to break the structure that Spider-Man was trying to grab hold on. And we get this whole splash panel basically showing all the battles that Spider-Man is doing with his Rogues Gallery, and it's just crazy. Eventually, Morlun grabs Spider-Man, reminiscent of what happened in his first battle with Morlun, and it's going to take Spider-Man's life force whenever Fred basically attacks Morlun and grabs him and gets him off Spider-Man. But Morlun grabs Boomerang and basically drains all of his life force, basically killing him, which was a massive surprise. I was not expecting Fred to get killed in this run. And Morlun just said, that there was no way that a normal human could satisfy his hunger. And Spider-Man basically loses, saying that you killed him, and he attacks Morlun and just starts going in on him. And it was just a really good scene. After, Boomerang's teammates see what exactly happened to him, they basically turn on the rest of the Sinister Sixes, basically. And it's an amazing scene. And a full-out war just breaks out between all the different Sinister Sixes. And it's amazing. A really good action sequence. Eventually, Dr. Octopus figures out how to take out Kindred's mind control type thing. Well, not mind control, but the thing that will explode their brains. Basically freeing all of them from Kindred's control, basically. And Kindred's not happy, but Dr. Octopus basically gets thanked by Spider-Man, for doing this all for him. But Dr. Octopus basically says that Kindred went against their deal in giving him answers, and that's the reason why Dr. Octopus is doing this, because he doesn't want to be controlled by Kindred, and especially being threatened, for his life, basically, by Kindred. So the deal's off, and, Spider-Man should leave before he changes his mind about letting him live. Spider-Man has took massive damage. But Spider-Man knows he ain't going home to rest. He's gonna go fight Kindred and finally end this. And this leads us into the final conflict of the whole Kindred saga / Knitminster run. So we get to see that, not Dr. Octopus, Doctor Strange is talking to Mephisto, and they're basically gonna do a deal with this climax. So that's going on. We also get to see that Gwen Stacy, or I believe her name is Sarah, who is like a clone of Gwen Stacy, supposed to be like a daughter type clone, basically reveals herself to be Kindred to Mary Jane, and which some completely surprises her. Now we get the explanation of Gabriel and Sarah, basically, which are from, I believe, Sin's Past or something like that. A very hated story arc in Spider-Man's comic history. And yeah, it's revealed that Harry Osborn made a deal with Mysterio, and basically made it to where Norman Osborn thought that he had made these children with Gwen, but in fact he was never with Gwen like that, and these weren't real children, they were actually just clones that were made to deceive Norman Osborn into thinking that he had actual biological children. And yeah, it's pretty messed up. We'll get more into what's happening with Sarah and Gabriel in a little bit, but yeah, it's a messed up scene. Now we get to see that Harry actually reveals that he himself is a clone, and that the real Harry Osborn is actually still dead and is actually in hell because of Norman Osborn's deal that he made with Mephisto, which was a massive surprise to me, as I was not expecting that. Just like a lot of people, I thought he was going to be the pre-One More Day Harry that was going to be Kindred. So massive respect to Nick Spencer for coming up with this massive plot twist that I definitely did not call or see coming. Now we get to see the backstory for Sarah and Gabriel, and it's revealed that Sarah and Gabriel are actually clones that keep getting made. Basically, they keep reincarnating, and they basically age super fast, and they can't even enjoy their lives because of how they age. They basically are forced to repeat the cycle over and over again, basically suffering in hell before they're reincarnated back to Earth, and then eventually, die off again, have to suffer somewhere in hell, and then they come back. And basically it's made them just so bitter and wanting revenge on Norman and Peter for having to suffer all the time because of, they didn't ask to be created. This is on Harry for creating them, for Kindred for creating them, basically. And yeah, so it's a really cool scene, and they basically talked about how this is finally what they feel like they were meant to be, basically, that they were created to be. And it's just a very weird scene because they basically take the face of Harry Osborn, so I'm not sure if it's supposed to be like the power of shape-shifting, or if this is like one of their powers to make themselves look different, or if this is like Harry. I don't know, it's really weird how this scene was done, but it was really cool at the same time because Sarah and Gabriel are definitely characters that made this scene very like plot twisty, that a lot of us didn't see coming, and it works in the sense of, we'll see later on in their interactions with Norman Osborn, and it made sense why they hate him so much. But we get to see that Norman basically is surprised by all this, and while that's going on, we get to see that Doctor Strange and Mephisto basically say that they're gonna do a deal, basically a one final game to see how Peter Parker will get out of this mess, with the prize being Doctor Strange. So if Peter Parker fails and Mephisto's plan actually succeeds in using Kindred. And yeah, it's a really cool scene. Now we get to see that from Harry's point of view, his flashbacks, that he was actually, when he died in the pre-One More Day story, whenever Harry had originally died, he actually did go to hell because of Norman's deal. And yeah, Mephisto basically revealed everything to him on what exactly Norman had made a deal with, and that his life was going to be suffered for eternity because of Norman, which was like super messed up. So Mary Jane basically escapes from Gwen, and she goes through a portal that we saw in the last remaining story arc, which I don't know what exactly these portals are supposed to be. Maybe they were made by Mephisto, or maybe Kindred has the powers of, the other world. I have no idea, but these are like portal mirrors. And she basically comes out and kisses Peter and basically tells him that they need to get out of here, because of what exactly is happening. Eventually Norman makes his way to the two, and he says, that they need to get out of there as well, and he reveals that there's actually two Kindreds, and this is a big surprise. This was like a massive plot twist for me. I couldn't believe it when I saw this panel, and yeah, it's an amazing moment. And like I said, while that's going on, we're seeing the deal between Doctor Strange and Mephisto, And this is it. This is the final climax. The battle begins, and Spider-Man is taking a beating. He's taking on two very powerful fighters. Because if you remember, during the last main story arc, he fought only one Kindred. He was getting, the snot beat out of him, basically. Now he's having to fight two at the same time, and it's just too much for Peter to handle. He's just taking a massive beating, and we have some amazing action panels. I thought the action was so well done, and it's probably because of Mark Bagley. Mark Bagley is like a legend, and I definitely need to make a video about him in the future because his art is just fantastic. So I'm pretty sure they had him on the action sequences, just because of how they're drawn. But yeah, so we get to see that Carly and Harry basically make their way to Harry's apartment, or his home, and he sees his wife sleeping and his son sleeping. He realizes what he needs to do. He has to put on, well, not put on the goblin mask and stuff and the outfit, but he's going to use the glider and the pumpkin balls. He's going to help Peter defeat the Kindreds, the Osborn, I guess, siblings. I don't know what you would call them, because they're not from Norman Osborn after all. But I don't even know what they were called back then. But basically, just, Gabriel and I think her name was Sarah. And yeah, so we get to see this awesome panel of Spider-Man just being defeated by these two Kindreds. But before they can land the final blow, Harry arrives and lands a pumpkin bomb on them, getting them away from Spider-Man. And he basically says that this is not just his fight, and he offers a hand to Spider-Man, and Spider-Man surprises Harry's dead, and he knows that something's not right, but he's just glad to have his friend back again on his side. And I really did enjoy this fight scene. This fight scene was amazing, and we get to see Spider-Man and Harry basically doing what they should have done in all those years ago, without, Harry going crazy, being, the Green Goblin, the second Green Goblin. This is what Harry would have been had he never taken the Goblin Serum, probably. Or maybe if he had taken the Goblin Serum, and Peter would have done a better job being a better friend during those years for Harry. And maybe this is how things would have played out. And I really enjoyed that. We got to see a version of Harry that could have been Spider-Man's ally in battle. And it's just an amazing scene. During this fight scene, we get to see that Norman is basically regretting everything he did in his life to Harry, feeling guilty for all the stuff that's happening at the moment, this battle that's happening at the moment. We get to see that while Harry was in hell, that the demons took the shape of Norman in a way. And I thought that was really interesting that, Harry basically had a personal hell that he was dealing with in the afterlife. I thought that was really cool. And Harry basically reveals during the battle that Sarah and Gabriel are not really Gwen and Norman's children, and that never happened. It was all a lie made by Harry. And this gives Spider-Man basically the confidence he needs to land a blow on one of the Kindred, saying that he knew, and that somehow, he always knew what, that this was the truth, that Gwen would never have been with Norman. And the battle just keeps going on, and eventually Norman steps out and says that they would need to stop the fight, that if they want to take out their anger on someone, take it out on him, because he's the one that made their creation ever happen in the first place. And they're about to kill Norman whenever Spider-Man and Harry decide that they both need to, save Norman's life, do the right thing and fight against these Kindreds. And they basically do. And while the battle is going on, eventually they get behind Norman and they say that they're going to kill him, basically for him to die. And the clone of Harry basically gets in front of Norman and takes the killing blow. And yeah, it's an amazing scene, an amazing sacrifice. It goes against the cliche of like Harry going in front of like Peter to save his life. And I thought this was a massive moment for Harry's character. And it gave him the ending that he deserved. He was a hero at the very end, doing the right thing, saving his father. One of the people that he loved the most and won the approval of during his life, on Earth. And he basically dies, in Spider-Man's arms. And Spider-Man gets mad because Kindred basically, both the Kindreds, or one of them, says that, that he shouldn't be crying over a clone, that it's pathetic. And to save his tears because he's going to need them. And Spider-Man basically says, that all I need right now is some payback. And he basically goes on to battle both the Kindreds. Now, Mephisto basically explains to Doctor Strange that the whole thing with Gabriel and Sarah is that they keep getting killed because of their rapid aging, developments, basically, their progress. And they basically reincarnate, they're reborn, and they start the same process again. And that in his realm, they suffer untold agonies, but with a purpose to prepare them for this moment. So he basically tortures them for eternity until they have to, you know, be reincarnated, and then they do it all over again. It's just a cycle over and over again, which explains their hatred towards Spider-Man, Norman, and anyone associated to their creation, or, you know, the purpose of their creation with Harry doing this to them. And yeah, I thought that was really interesting that they don't just blame Harry, they blame the reason why Harry even did it in the first place. A lot of people have a hand in their creation. I think this is a really good way to end the story of Ned Spencer's run. Like I said, this is a really good development, having Sarah and Gabriel be the kindreds, and it gives so much reasons to why they hate him so much. I thought it was just something really well done, and saying that a lot of us, especially me, did not expect to be happening. You know, for Kindred to be two people and to be Sarah and Gabriel. But yeah, I think they're called Sarah and Gabriel Stacy now that I think about it, but I don't know. Let me know down below if you ever read that story arc with Sins Past. I never read it. I might never read it, because I hear it's so terrible, but who knows? Now that it's retconned, maybe I will, just to, you know, see the novelty in it. But yeah, but basically back to the story, we get to see the fight between Spider-Man. He's just going in on both the kindreds because they killed Harry. They killed a version of Harry that could have lived on his life. Basically, like he says, that they killed his best friend, a husband, a father. Basically, this was their next chance to have, you know, a family again, you know, even though it was just a clone. He basically could have had his son and his wife, you know, be happy again, because they had a version of Harry to be with them. But now he's dead, so they're basically in the same position they were in before. It's just very sad. And yeah, the battle basically continues, and we get a lot of cool action scenes, like I said, that were probably drawn by Mark Badley. Maybe it was another one of the artists, but very good scenes. And eventually Spider-Man says that, you know, he felt sorry for them, and he felt guilty for what he caused them, but with them killing Harry and basically showing no remorse and basically showing that they would kill anyone, he basically says that there's no more, that he doesn't feel that anymore, basically, that he's just going to take them down. And I really love this scene where he says that, you know, one of the kindred says that your best friend's there lying dead. You know, they basically said your best friend's lying there dead. You don't feel any responsibility. And before they can even finish that word, Spider-Man, you know, sucker punches them and basically knocks them out. And he basically comes to the realization that Harry's dead yet again. And it's very sad. But eventually both kindreds get up and they basically attack Spider-Man at once. And the battle continues for a little bit, and we get a lot of cool action scenes again, with some really good dynamic paneling and perspective, both of them taking on Spider-Man at once, and Spider-Man basically is just getting attacked, and eventually the whole monument, as they say, the Osborn Monument, or the monument to the Osborns, crumbled to dust, that any of their apologists can go with it, and basically Spider-Man gets collapsed. Basically the rubble collapses on top of him. Very reminiscent to what we saw in the original Stan Lee and Steve Ditko run, which is what Mephisto is expecting from Spider-Man when Spider-Man kind of like isn't doing anything. Basically determines that he won the game, but Doctor Strange basically explains that they have one more champion that's not Spider-Man, as each one had two champions. Yes, Mephisto was Gabriel and Sarah, but for Doctor Strange it was Peter Parker and Mary Jane. And we can see Mary Jane basically going through the rubble, grabbing Spider-Man, saying if he's okay and if he needs a hand. And yeah, she basically grabs him and helps him get out of the rubble, which was a really nice, good moment for the two characters and the relationship, showing that they have a very strong relationship and that she would not leave him when he's in this dire battle. And when Spider-Man basically says that she should have kept running, and that the battle is probably still gonna go on because of, him getting out, that must mean that Kindred's probably got up as well. And they basically tell him that, not to be afraid that it's over and that he's won. That because Mephisto has lost, he was the only one keeping their rapid aging from going through. And this is basically the end for them. And that just like before, when they're no longer useful, they basically die out. And it's very sad. And as their masks basically fade away, they crumble away, they just see that the Gwen Stacy, which is, I guess, Sarah Stacy, she basically tells Spider-Man that they were never real. And that, that they never had a mother either. And, Spider-Man basically takes off his mask and says that if it's any constellation, basically, trying to make him feel better, that true or not, if you needed it, she had loved you all the same, which is true. Had these kids, lived being these clones and that, and had they not been aging as fast, if Spider-Man had found a way, because he's a scientist, to keep them at a certain age, at least, their age normally, they would have treated them as their kids, for sure. Because that's just the type of people that Spider-Man and Gwen were. They would have definitely adopted them, and they probably would have had a nice family. Even though it would have been a little weird, because they wouldn't have ever been kids, they would have been adults probably, whenever they met them. But still, they would have been a family. And I think that would have been a really cool storyline. But yeah, Gwen's dead, so that could never happen. But yeah, very sad moment, and I thought it was really nice that Spider-Man showed some sympathy at the end, because he realized at the end that they really are just tortured people, and that it doesn't make it right that they killed Harry's clone. That was still an evil act, but definitely there was some sympathy at the end for these clones, and I really enjoyed that from Peter's character. And yeah, so we go towards the end of the volume, basically the whole story arc, with Norman basically grabbing Harry and basically saying that he's sorry, that Harry always thought that making Sarah and Gabriel would give Norman the kid that he always wanted, the child he always wanted, but as Norman said, he already had him with Harry. So that was a really sad moment, and while Norman's grieving over Harry and holding him, you see that Mary Jane and Peter share a hug and basically just accept that the conflict is finally over. And yeah, we go back to Doctor Strange and Mephisto, and we get to see that Mephisto reveals to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange wants to know what's the fascination with Peter Parker. Why does he make his life like this? Why was he making this a game? And it's revealed to us by Mephisto that in the future that he saw a type of destiny that he saw his own destiny. He saw that he conquered Earth and all of its heroes, but there was one that would bring an end to his reign and basically save the Earth, and that was actually Spider-Man and Mary Jane's daughter. Now, Mephisto basically says that it was Spider-Man to Doctor Strange, but Doctor Strange realizes that this is a lie, because he never just attacked Peter Parker, so that's not true. That would take care of the problem if Peter Parker was the one to bring down Mephisto and end his reign on Earth. But that's not the case, so that's when Mephisto basically says that one can never tell what the future holds. And that's when it's revealed that it's actually Spider-Man's daughter, which tells us that this is way in the future, like maybe 20 years in the future, if Mary Jane and Peter have a kid soon in the comics. In what comics timeline, I'm not saying in our timeline, because, comics go forever. But yeah, basically just showing us a possible timeline. So I'm pretty sure this isn't the only future that can happen, but it's a future that does scare Mephisto, I guess, and that's why he does so much to Peter Parker. And as, Doctor Strange tells Mephisto, after Mephisto says that he won, and why does he have a problem with winning, or does he suspect that Mephisto's up to something? And Doctor Strange says, that perhaps that his arrogance is his own undoing. And he calls him Demon as well, which is, something that Doctor Strange does with Mephisto, I guess. He just, kind of like just treats him like this. And it seems like they kind of hate each other, but kind of like each other at the same time. Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I'm pretty sure they have a lot more interactions with Doctor Strange's comics, but I've never read them, so I don't know. So leave a comment down below if you know if there's a relationship between Doctor Strange and Mephisto that is kind of like this, like a hate-love relationship, as kind of respecting of each other. But yeah, so Spider-Man and Mary Jane basically head home, and they basically, fly, I guess. I don't know why they need to fly, but maybe they went to their home. Maybe this wasn't in New York City, I have no idea. It wouldn't make any sense, because all of the Sinister Sixes, unless they all traveled to this place, wouldn't make any sense. But overall, they basically head home and go to sleep, and when they wake up the next morning, Peter's in his Spider-Man suit. He grabs Mary Jane, they basically swing off, and they go up to the tower that they were on. In the first volume of the series, the way the first issue started is the way the last issue started, as Nitzmister said in his author comments, which I thought was a really good decision. My only problem is that Peter looks very pissed off whenever he takes off, whenever Mary Jane takes off his mask, so I don't know why it was drawn like that. I think that might have been a mistake on the artist's part, but overall, it's not that big of a deal. It just, I thought it was kind of funny. It felt very off that he looks mad whenever she takes off the mask. Maybe he wanted to do it, I don't know. But the volume ends with Mary Jane and Peter basically sharing a kiss like they did in the first volume. And that's the end of Nick Spencer's run, and it's a very sad moment. I'm happy, but I'm also sad because I love Nick Spencer's run, and sad that we're not going to get any more story arcs from him / volumes. But I'm glad that it ended off strong, and I was happy with this conclusion, with definitely some ideas of where the story could go in the future and the developments that the next writer can do to what Nick Spencer has started with this final volume, basically this final story of his. And yeah, that was The Amazing Spider-Man, probably volume 15. I'm going to look that up to see if this is volume 15, but I'm guessing volume 15 is the end of Nick Spencer's run. It would make sense. But I don't know if it covers all these issues, but I'm just going to consider it volume 15, because this is it. This is the end of Nick Spencer's run. It was a great run, guys. And I remember, I think it was in June of this year, or July of this year, when I had started the Nick Spencer Spider-Man videos on the channel. I had started reading Nick Spencer Spider-Man last year, I think, or 2 years ago. I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago. And I've enjoyed it ever since I read it. And I thought Nick Spencer was a great writer. And I never thought that his run would end this year. I thought it would last until next year. I thought it was going to last until issue 100 like he planned. But that's not how things went down. And overall, for ending that happened faster than what was expected, I thought Nick Spencer and everyone involved, you have to remember, it's not just Nick Spencer, it's the artist, it's the colorist, it's the letterer, all these people, the higher ups that help him, probably talk to him about these decisions, everyone involved. I want to say thank you, and you did a good job. Thank you for the run, thank you for this series, and I'm hoping that we can continue to have some great moments and great stories coming after this, and that I can continue enjoying The Amazing Spider-Man, because this was just an amazing run. And like I said, Nick Spencer knocked it out of the park. We're gonna miss you. I know a lot of Spider-Man fans like myself, we're gonna miss you. You brought Spider-Man back to the forefront. He had a long run where people had just dropped off, and that I wasn't part of that generation. I don't know about that as much, but I know a lot of people agree that Nick Spencer brought Spider-Man back the same way James Tynion IV brought Batman back after the disaster that was the Tom King Batman run. And I will always thank and be thankful for Nick Spencer for doing that for the character. And who knows, maybe in the future he'll come back to do the character. Maybe he'll take a few years off and he'll come back eventually. That would be great. But good luck to anyone that is coming after Nick Spencer. We don't want to see you fail. People like me definitely want to see the next Spider-Man writer do a great job so we can enjoy this great series and get some great new Spider-Man stories. But yeah, finally, like I said, thank you, Nick Spencer, for everything you gave us in this story. I hope you the best in your career and for everything that you're going to do afterwards on Substack. And you'll never be forgotten for what you did for this character and for giving us, people like me, something to read every other 2 weeks or something like that. We'll forever be thankful for you, and thank you for everything you did for the character and for us, the fans. But that's going to be all, guys. Until the next video, God bless you. Until the next lesson, keep on reading those comments.